Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, December 17th, 2009. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. With this week, Partigyles gone wild. How many beers can you get from 2 mashes? Home brewers Greg Pietsch, Scott Schluter, and Mark Glinski join us to tell us what they got for an answer to that question. If you're new to home brewing and would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. And you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Basic Brewing, all one word. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james. And we also have a page for our shows at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Sorry. I was thinking about other stuff. I need a vacation. Thanks again to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us and click on our associate link first. It won't cost you any extra, and you'll be helping us to bring you this show. And we appreciate your support, especially during this busy holiday shopping season. You guys have been wonderful in doing that. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too. And we've also got Brewers Logbooks, 2010 Brewers Logbooks. You guys are ordering those in a good number. In fact, I'm having to reorder because I'm about to run out. So get yours before the first brew session of 2010 so you can log that in there. We've also got our new T-shirts designed by award-winning designer Casey Lohman. Our Reinheitsgebot is a 4-letter word shirts. And thanks very much to all of you out there and your spouses for your support during this holiday season. It's gotten to where the clerks at the post office cringe when they see me coming with my stack of packages to ship. And it's a great indication of your support, and we really appreciate it. Very busy, but very fun time of year. And we hope that you enjoy what you get. Hope you enjoy our stuff. And speaking of the holiday season, I'm going to take next week off from the audio podcast to spend some time with the family. Actually, what I'm probably going to be doing is spending some time with my brew pot, brewing up my entry into the Brew Your Own Basic Brewing Radio collaborative experiment. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's answering the question, how does a split volume boil affect extract brews? And also, how does the extract late method further affect that process? So I'm looking forward to participating in that and listening to what you guys have found out, too. You can see a detailed write-up on the process, including recipes for a very hoppy beer that you might want to brew in the experiment. You can see that on Chris Colby's blog on byo.com, and you can find links to that, the entries that Chris has written on that at the top of basicbrewingradio.com, and I hope that you will participate. I'm going to look into the mailbag and grab kind of an assortment this time. There's no theme. It's just emails that I've kept in the mailbag for a little bit. Damien from Melbourne, Australia, hope I'm pronouncing that close, writes with a Christmas present idea for brewers, if you haven't gotten one yet. Damien says, I have an infrared temperature probe that I've been using in my brewing days to check the temperature of the wort. For example, checking the wort, whether the wort is cool enough to pitch the yeast. I just point the device at the side of the container or directly on the wort, and it tells me how hot the wort is. This way, I am minimizing the possibility of introducing contamination, especially for post-boil temperature measurement. That is a cool idea. You just have to point it at what you want to measure and press the button, and there you go. Dustin from Tulsa, Oklahoma wrote a while back asking for help with his peanut butter cup stout. He'd added half a pound of peanut butter to a stout, and he said it had an oily mouthfeel afterwards. And he asked me how to fix it, and I said, I don't know. So he wrote back a little bit later with his own solution to the problem. Dustin says, I've been going through the archives on both the radio show and the video show, and I found the barley wine ice beer show. I started thinking about the freezing point of peanut oil, and I found out it freezes at 37.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So, says Dustin, I froze a few beers and am happily drinking the concentrate. My friends love it as well. So there you go. If you have an oily beer, freeze it, melt it, get the good stuff out, leave that oil behind. This one's in response to the pumpkin beer experiment that we did a couple episodes ago. And I don't think I've read this one. If I did, sorry. I'm getting old. I can't remember. This is from John. John says, after Halloween, my kids had a Harry Potter movie night when one of the characters mentioned pumpkin juice, and the request was made for a Thanksgiving drink. So I cut up 3 10-pound pumpkins into 1-inch cubes and roasted at 350 degrees Fahrenheit until soft. Smashed a wine press, and to my surprise, smashed in a wine press, and to my surprise, it yielded 3 gallons of juice. Next, I boiled with 1 ounce of aged hops, cinnamon, and cloves for an hour, pitched some wine yeast, let ferment 2 weeks, and received 3% alcohol. The flavor was slightly funky, and to another surprise, all of the pumpkin juice was drunk up at the Thanksgiving dinner. I will do better next year. Well, that sounds cool. Thanks, John. Steve, not Steve Wilkes, and you guys, you need to tell us where you're from. Steve says, he was one of a few of you guys who sent me links to stories about the FDA possibly going after beers with caffeine or coffee added. Steve says, I thought that you would be interested in this Washington Post article about the FDA going after craft brewers that add some coffee to their beer. And he sent a link to that. He says, I can understand the concern about beverages with substantial caffeine added for the buzz, but the fact that the FDA is lumping in craft brewers who add some coffee for flavor is ridiculous. I agree. Is this a modern-day Reinheitsgebot? I can understand the government overseeing the safety and the quality of the beer, making sure that it's safe to drink. But when they start messing with the recipes, that's where it gets tricky. I personally, if some brewers want to add just caffeine to their beer, I don't want to drink it. But as long as they list caffeine as an ingredient, if you don't want to buy it, don't buy it. You can make that choice. One more, and this is a bit self-indulgent, but I hope that you'll think it's funny. I sure did. Clark writes in and says, I've been chewing through all the past episodes, and much of that time has been while driving my 6-year-old triplets around to various activities. This morning I was on the way to Home Depot with one of my daughters, and she asked what we were going to get. Clark says, I told her I was buying all the lumber and steel piping to make a brew sculpture, and she asked if it was something for me to hang all my beer stuff on. I explained to her how I would no longer be brewing in the kitchen, on the stove, but on the driveway. And without missing a beat, she said, because that's what James Spencer would do? Clark says, I nearly lost it. I had no idea she'd been paying so much attention to the show. She then proceeded to pretty much recite your stock intro to the show and nailed it. Time to change the intro. Anyhow, Clark says, thought you might get a kick out of this. I did. I did get a big kick out of it. I forwarded it to my wife, and she thought it was scary. Scary that I was having influence over other people's kids, too, I guess. But thanks for the note, Clark. And hello to the triplets. Yet another reason to watch what I say on the show. Maybe I should just rewrite the intro to the show for 2010. Okay, let's get on to the meat of the matter today. You've heard Greg Pietsch on this program in the past, talking about yeast ranching. Well, this week, Greg is joined by Scott Schluter and Mark Glinski to tell about their very productive brew day, making the most out of 2 mashes. Okay, I want to welcome to Basic Brewing Radio Greg Pietsch.
Hi, James.
Scott Schluter.
Hello.
And Mark Glinski.
How you doing, James?
I'm well. And you guys are up there in the Northeast, around the Cape Cod area. And I'm down here in the heartland. Well, kind of south of kind of like the diaphragm of the country, I guess, if you're going to. But we want to talk about a brewing session that I want to call Partygyle Gone Wild. And I think as the conversation develops, I think the listeners can gain an appreciation for why I want to say that. But I guess what we first need to do is for newbie brewers or for brewers who aren't familiar with the concept, who wants to describe what a Partygyle brew is?
Well, everyone just pointed at me. This is Greg. Why do I always get stuck with these things?
Well, you're the veteran. You're the Basic Brewing Radio veteran. So.
Oh, great. So
You've been here before.
A Partygyle is a traditional brewing technique where you do multiple beers off a single mash. And the people did that before they started sparging. So you basically do a mash, drain that out, have a high-strength wort, put more warm water in the mash, drain that out, get a lower strength, and on down, 2, 3 beers, whatever you can get out of it.
And sparging is essentially rinsing the sugars out of the grain. So instead of doing a fly sparge where you just run water continuously through the grains or the mash, continuously running the sugars out, you do a batch sparge where you drain out the wort, the initial wort, which is strong, fill it up with water, drain it out again, and keep going until you run out of sugars, essentially.
Right.
And in this way, you can get a big, strong beer. You can get kind of a medium beer, and then you can get one for the kids. Which in the days before safe water, before safe drinking water, that was actually a practical application, or so they say. It's at least part of the brewing lore of, what we're going with.
And we fully support it.
How European of you. Now, talk about what was your goal on this brew day, and this was in early December or early November that you guys got together. What was your goal in getting together on this brew day?
Make beer.
Yeah, make beer.
More specifically,
we were looking for 3 beers total. And we ended up with a whole lot more than that. That was really about the size of it. We were hoping for 3 beers, and we ended up with 5.
We had done a couple of, I guess we sort of call them pseudo partygyles, where we just basically did big extract batches, and we'd done a few of those as club activities, and that was pretty fun. And we had sort of wanted to get together and brew again, and thought, well, we might try doing the real thing.
Now, there's some considerations when you're formulating a recipe for a Partygyle. You've got to kind of figure out how much sugar you're going to get in each draining of the mash tun, right? How does that work?
Well, we use lots of spreadsheets.
It's all theoretical. And the reality is when you get these worts out in different containers, if they don't hit what you want, you can swap quarts between them until you raise one and lower the other till they're close to what you want.
And I'm not sure when we really did this if we looked at so much how much would come out in first runnings and how much would come out in a second runnings. We sort of thought about what beers we wanted to make and sort of made base recipes, sort of standalone. What would we do for a triple, a double, a quadruple? And then sort of worked things backwards. A traditional way to do a partigyle would be to calculate out that division of sugars. And there's a couple of formulas out there, but basically you look at 60%, 2/3 of the sugars going into the first beer, and 30 or 40% of the sugars going into the second beer if you're doing two beers of equal volume.
So there's kind of a guideline that you could kind of thumbnail what you're expecting from those runnings, right? I mean,
right.
2/3 of the sugars coming out in the first draining of the mash tun, and then maybe a fraction of the rest in the second runnings. How close did you get in that?
Well, we're still somewhat in the post-mortem. I know I've been looking at what came out of my mash tun. This is Greg. I did the quadruple in my tun, and I think that first beer we got out of it was about 60% of the sugars. So it sort of matched with sort of the partigyle theory.
And what was your method of mashing? What was your mash tun like?
I have a 10-gallon round cooler with a bazooka screen in the bottom, and we pretty much filled it up. We figured out about what we thought it could hold, which was 24 pounds, and I mashed it with, I think 1.25 quarts per pound of water, about 150-ish degrees, and it was just about up to the rim.
Yeah.
And who had the other mash tun?
I did. This is Scott. I did brew in a bag method. So my sugars weren't going to come out anything like what you normally would get with the Spargic method. I knew that, and it's just a function of how much you squeeze that bag after you yank it out. Squeeze it too much, and you get more sugar, and squeeze it less, and you get less sugar. So I had planned on doing a swap with the worts anyways, right from the start. And it did end up coming up more. I believe the goal for my triple was 1057, and I believe we got 1073 out of it. So quite a bit more than the theoretical.
That was before you swapped it.
Just before we swapped it.
So how did you handle that? I mean, what size were you going for? For 5-gallon batches with these beers?
Yes, I have a big 15-gallon aluminum pot for the brew in a bag setup, and that's where I mash in.
So the theory was to take the second runnings. I mean, you get your first runnings, you get big beers from both of these mash tuns, and then the theory was, since you get 1/3 of the sugar from the second runnings from the first mash tun and 1/3 of the sugars from the second mash tun, you combine those together, and then theoretically you get 2/3 of the sugars again because you're combining the two second runnings. Is that? It's confusing, but
somewhere.
Yeah, that's pretty much was our thought.
I more or less looked at it and said, the whole 2/3, 1/3 thing, and said, well, let's just look at thirds and say I have 3/3 comes out of one mash tun and 3/3 comes out of another mash tun, and you take 1/3 from each one of those two and look at it volume-wise. You have 5 gallons from one, 5 gallons from the other, and then 2.5 gallons that add up to the 5 gallons you need for the third beer.
So how did that work?
Well, we almost hit. Brew in the bag, there was an over-guess on the amount of water that I needed. I went with the normal, looking at, 0.1 gallon per pound of grains would be absorbed in normal predictions, but because I squeeze I got a lot more water out, and a lot less of it stayed in the grain. So our volume on the second part of the beer was a little bit more than what we predicted. So Greg had to contribute a little less on that volume.
And I waited till he was done with his because we were kind of worried about that. And so we sort of looked at, okay, how much do we need now? And just added that much back into my mash tun for my second runnings.
So what was the grain bill like? Were the grain bills the same for both mash tuns?
No, I think they're about the same weight.
Yes, they were both 24s. The triple we shot for very simple. We had 23 pounds of pale, and then some aromatic in there. And then the quad, you had 15 pounds of pale, 3 pounds of Munich, 2.5 Cara Munich, and 3.5 Special Beet.
And so did you added different sugars, I would assume, to these three beers. Did you do anything with more specialty grains in any of these?
Mr. Glinski?
Well, in the double, we ended up with a half a pound of aromatic and a half pound of biscuit. The triple ended up with a quarter of a pound of aromatic, and other than that, it was pretty much what Scott just told you about. And like I said, we haven't tried the double yet, but we're gonna hopefully try that tonight.
So the double was the kind of child of the two parents.
Yeah, I'm the extract brewer in the group, so I'm really just following these two.
And this was part of the fun. Is we made 3 beers. We also used 3 different brewing techniques. We steep in grains and brew in a bag all grain, and a mash tun of a cooler all grain.
So how much improvisation did you have to do? I mean, did you make a plan and then stick to the plan, or did you make a plan and say, well, that's not working, let's go somewhere else?
We had a plan. I'm not sure if we all knew what it was at any given moment, but we definitely.
I certainly didn't.
We had our mash bills, our grain bills, and we had our theoretical volumes of sparging, and for that second running beer, we had to adjust that because the brew in the bag gave us more volume than we expected, and we had also worked up hop bills ahead of time, and for that we pretty much just used brewing software to sort of make a generic beer of the gravity we were looking at, and use that to formulate our hop additions and figure out the IBUs and so forth. So, we had all that, got it measured out, and I think we managed to keep on track with that.
Much, yeah.
And a little bit of improvisation, swapping some runnings back and forth, trying to get the gravities more where we wanted it.
Yep.
But it went, it went much smoother than I think we were expecting.
Yeah. The whole brew day went remarkably smoothly. This is Mark. I was expecting probably an 8 or 10 hour brew day, and we ended up just about 7 hours worth of brew day. I think it was.
Yeah.
And we finished up about 5, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Give or take.
Yep.
That's not too far off from a traditional all grain brew day, at least from my experience. So what were the gravities of the 3 beers?
Well, the double ended up around 1051.
And that was the child.
It was the child, yes.
The quad ended up about 1084, and that was before sugar additions, which I ended up putting 3 pounds of do we call it actual candy syrup or not? But
pseudo candy syrup,
pseudo Belgian candy syrup, a la Basic Brewing Radio.
I hope yours turned out a little more easy to use than ours did.
Yeah, actually, it poured really nicely, and
it didn't pour like roofing tar.
That's a good comparison to what we got. And then where was the triple?
Triple, I got 1069, and then I ended up putting in 4 pounds of table sugar in that.
So those are three good gravity beers from 2 mash tuns.
Yes.
But wait, there's more.
Now, how much would you pay? Don't answer yet. So you're not being satisfied with that. Where did you guys take it from there?
I don't know that we weren't satisfied with that so much as we saw an opportunity and sort of jumped on it. We realized at the end of the brew day that we still had a fair amount of sugar left in the mash tuns. And how much did we throw on?
Yeah, I think we were looking at what was left in the quadruple mash, and can't really remember what the gravity was at that point, but it seemed like, boy, we could brew a beer. And then I think we looked at my wife's face and thought, yeah, maybe we shouldn't brew a beer tonight. By the way, we're not letting her listen to this.
Yeah, no.
But so we decided to cap that with another 2 pounds of pale malt, and added some more warm water in, and gosh, I think it was 3 or 4 gallons.
A couple of gallons.
Yeah, I think it was 2.5, 3 gallons that we added in, and for what it was worth, we had a White Labs
sour culture, and we tossed a little bit of that in for good measure, and sealed it up, and decided to come back the next day.
So what temperature were we looking at the mash?
Well, I think I put in water about 150 degrees, which looking back probably killed most of the culture we added.
Probably.
But we let it sit for a day and came back the next afternoon, and my temperature was about 100 degrees in there, and it kind of smelled like something you shouldn't put in your mouth. So I thought, well, sure, I can make beer out of this. Well, of course.
So what did it smell like? I mean, what kind of a character were you getting off the mash at that point?
Wow. If I had ever smelled that before, I think I would have run the other direction and not cared what it came from.
Just not
we may
not a happy fermentation.
It's one of those your head kind of moves back. Whoa! What was that?
I mean, are we talking locker room, or are we talking barnyard, or are we talking stable, or dirty clothes hamper, or what?
Okay. Okay.
Toss it in the mash.
Pretty much got it.
I tend not to be scared of too many things, so I was sort of like, I don't think it smells bad enough, but
if it gets to the diaper genie level, then you got something.
Yeah. But I went ahead and just drained out the mash and looked at the volume I had and figured out how much I needed to get the volume I wanted, and sort of did a batch sparge with a few more gallons to fill my kettle up, and boiled it, sort of grabbed some hops on the fly that I had stolen from Mark. We would do some Hallertau.
I think it was Hallertau. I don't know what else I gave you. What was the other one I gave you?
I'm not sure right now.
And what kind of gravity were we looking at this point?
So I ended up with a gravity after the boil of 1052.
Oh my goodness!
And that was 5 gallons. So that was pretty darn good, I thought.
Yeah. And you just added just a couple of pounds of base malt at the beginning of the thing.
Yep.
Wow.
And so, theoretically, back calculating without that cap, I should have had like 1037-ish. So I was pleasantly surprised.
It's still a respectable beer at 1037.
And I think my gravity was so good because we really used a lot less for the Dubo from my mash tun, just because we'd overshot our volume so much with Scots. So, theoretically, in our plan, we would take all those extra sugars and cram them into whatever volume of water we put in, and that doesn't work in reality.
Unless you got a big brew pot and you want to boil a lot, maybe. But we're still not done with this.
Oh, wait, there's more.
It can cut a can.
I wasn't going to be outdone by Greg. This is Scott. So I have my brew in the bag, and the grains were still in the bag, kicking around in the bin that I put all my stuff in, and figured all kinds of Brett and lacto and who knows what else was getting in there. I said, why don't I try it too? I got home, I put a gallon and a half of 160 water into the cooler and capped it. And I came back the next day after work, and in the dark in my front yard, I brewed a beer.
Now, did you add anything? You say it had Brett and all that in there. Did you add anything?
I didn't add anything. I figured it was just whatever was getting to it in the air was going to be enough for me. And this actually all came from an idea of something I saw on a forum. O'Daniel talks about a Kentucky Common, and this is a method he uses where he just mashes for 24 hours and gets this little bit of a sour pucker out of it. And that's what I thought maybe we'd get. And so I ended up brewing up my beer, and I used East Kent Goldings. I put in some coriander, some marmalade, grains of paradise.
Oh, my goodness.
And I ended up with 1.031. I probably could have boiled it down a little bit more, but it was dark. It was late. I said, good enough. I mean, this was asking for the fifth beer out of these 2 tons. And then I ended up doing some additions to it because after it was in the primary for 4 weeks or so, I had a 3.3 absolute alcohol by volume, and it was a little thin. So I decided, why not do a little mini mash? I put in a half pound of 60L and an ounce of torrefied wheat and 2.5 quarts of water at 160 degrees in about 45 minutes or so. And I cooled it down and after I boiled it. And then I dumped in that, and I did about 1.25 pounds of the caramel syrup recipe from Brew Like a Monk and tossed that all in there.
Wow. And
it got color, it got body, and it got a little boost. I couldn't tell you what the alcohol is because I wouldn't be able to figure out what the gravity was after all those additions, but it does have a little more kick than it did before. So I'd guess it's probably around 4%.
Now, what kind of are you getting on the 2 bonus beers? Are you getting some sour character? What kind of character are you getting from those?
Yeah, mine definitely had a nice little sour twang. Not super strong, but noticeable. Even right after the boil. And I was actually just looking at my notes. I had for the mash put 4 gallons of 150 degree water in with the 2-pound pale malt cap, and the next day my runnings on that were 1047. And I sparged it out till I got about 6 gallons into my kettle, and had about 1042, and then ended up at the 1052 after the boil, and it was Hallertau and Saaz hops, and I had some grains of paradise, coriander, and orange peel lying around, so those had gone in at the end of the boil also. But definitely nice little sour kick. After mine was fermented, it still was a little sour. I thought it was also lacking a little bit of body, or it just wasn't balanced. It was just sort of sour, not a lot of body, nothing there. So I added some sour cherry juice and let that ferment out in a secondary, and that has made a good thing as far as I can tell.
Huh. Now, we haven't talked about yeast at all, have we?
We have not.
No, we haven't.
Nope.
So did you use an assortment of yeasts, or did you stick with the same one? Where did you go?
The quad and the triple both used the, was it 3787? The Trappist High Gravity. And the double was the Belgian Ale, the Wyeast Belgian Ale.
The White Labs 550.
Oh, I'm sorry, White Labs.
The Belgian Ale.
Mm-hmm.
And I used that in my version of the sour beer as well, because I had some of that starter left over.
And for the sour recession, I did SO5.
So just the Safal USO5?
Yep.
Wow. So, I mean, it seems like you really got your money's worth out of the...
Oh, did we mention that we bought a sack of base malt and ended up, our pale malt cost us about 72 cents per pound?
Well, there you go. Now,
we definitely got our money's worth.
I think we're somewhere around about $8 a case.
Wow. Now, is this something that you guys would do again?
Yes.
Yes.
And I assume it's something that you would recommend that other brewers try as well.
I don't know that it's something I'd want to do on my own, but if you had a couple of friends to do it with, absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely seemed a lot more intimidating, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out recipes, but it really actually doing it was pretty easy. I think the tough thing is if you're trying to make something specific, it gets a lot more challenging. But if you're kind of experimenting and you're probably going to come out with something good. It just might be hard to put a label on.
Now,
looking at doing this in the future on just my solo brewing sessions. Taking a recipe like a pale ale and deciding to add a little extra grain in there, and then doing the 24-hour mash on the second runnings, if you will, on it, and have two brews out of the same mash tun. It's a simple enough process to do.
Now, having gone through this, what good advice could you give people who had never done this before? I mean, what did you discover that was the biggest surprise, or what advice that can you give brewers who haven't done this before?
I think Mark has taught me, relax, don't worry, have a homebrew.
There you go.
So the extract brewer has something to bring to the table, in other words.
Well, we can hardly get him to use a hydrometer, so.
That's really not untrue.
Well, and in this case, I mean, there is a lot to that, because if you're in a situation where you're improvising as you go along, you can't really get hung up on the details. It seems like to me that in the 2 or 3 Partygyle brew sessions I've been a part of, you just kind of go with it, and you take what the mash tun gives you, and you just kind of roll from there. Is that is that the philosophy that you would advise?
Yeah.
Pretty much, you just got to roll with it.
And if things aren't working out in terms of your gravities, I mean, it's easy enough to swap quarts back and forth from one wort to another to balance things out and get a target that if you haven't hit, you can probably get it and sort of dial things in.
I think it also helped on our recipe formulation. We shot for the high end of the styles, and then also shot for the low end on our efficiencies. We figured, one or the other is going to kind of get us there in the middle, and it kind of got to that.
Yeah, and I think, I guess, if you're, getting into doing, some of the calculations, I think using a fairly low efficiency is probably the way to go, because it's not the most efficient method of brewing, at least for a single beer. I think I was sort of running the numbers, and I think for our 3 intended beers, we probably got about a 60% efficiency out of our grains, which I think is about what we were estimating at. Yep. So we hit our target there. But with the bonus beers, that pushed us up to about 80%.
Well, there you go. Yeah, you didn't, since you didn't go through the normal sparging cycle, or the normal lautering and sparging cycle, you didn't rinse all the good stuff out of the grains to go on those initial beers. So there was still some left over, so you were smart to come back and make use of that. And I'm assuming to kind of add to your flexibility, if you do the same grain bill essentially in each mash tun, and then do steeping grains like you guys did in the brew pots, instead of adding your specialty grains in the mash tuns, that adds to your flexibility even more, because then it's just a matter of gravity, and it's not a matter of character of the malts, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can end up with three very, very different beers, or in this case 5 very, very different beers, just based on the hop additions and the steeping grains.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly the quad is just jet black, and the triple
caramel.
Yep. And my sour mash is almost a little reddish to almost pink hue from the cherry.
The cherry juice,
yeah.
Do that.
Huh.
So they're going to make a nice lineup for a photo when we ever get them all back together.
For a family reunion. The parents, the child, and then the sour stepchildren.
Way to put 3 parents, I guess. Yeah.
The new American Gothic. Well, this has been fun, and I think that I hope that you've inspired other brewers out there to kind of look at their process, especially in the Partygyle process, and getting together and doing a collaborative brew day, and seeing what they can come up with. I think this is just a lot of fun. And it seems like you guys had fun as well.
Oh yeah, we had a great time. Yeah. We'll try to send some of the beers along to you.
Ooh. Now that extends the fun. See, I would encourage that.
It's not that we don't have enough now.
Yeah. You've only got how many cases of beer?
25 gallons.
Well, that's 10 cases of beer, right?
Yep.
Approximately. That's enough to share, I would think.
Without question.
Well, guys, Greg and Scott and Mark, this is, like I say, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks, James.
What an awesome story. What a great, fun brew day. Thanks again to Greg, Scott, and Mark. That sounds just like all kinds of fun. And I hope that you got some inspiration from it too. You don't have to have a rigid plan or recipe going into a brew day if you have a little experience and know what you're doing. Remember, next week I'm off, so you'll have to find something else to do with that 45 minutes or so that you usually spend listening to this program. I don't think you'll have any problems with that, being Christmas week. We wish you a very Merry Christmas, or whatever you celebrate. if you gather around the Festivus pole, airing your grievances with your feats of strength, enjoy that too. Enjoy your family, friends, and loved ones. And Steve and I will be back on the very last day, it turns out, of 2009 for one more show before the end of the year. It's a fun one. We've already recorded it, by the way. And we'll have one more video podcast on the same topic before the end of the year. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Our logbooks are going out the door. Get yours. Also, our Reinheitsgebot is a 4-letter word shirt is going out the door, too. The green is markedly more popular than the Vegas Gold. But you can be different. Check out our homebrewing DVDs on our website. Introduction to Extract Homebrewing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. And you can check out our combo deals to save you a few bucks. You can also see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. And as usual, thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We appreciate the support. Man, so many things to choose from this week. Our featured products this week that were purchased through the link are How to Take Over the World, a lolcat guide to winning. Kelly and I saw the lolcat people at South by Southwest a couple years ago, and they bought cheeseburgers for everybody. And so, we were thinking, hey, ICANN has cheeseburger. And then they put the cheeseburgers outside on the table in the hallway so that everybody who wasn't sitting in the session got to eat the cheeseburgers. We couldn't has cheeseburger. And also on the site purchased through the link, the Software Requirements Memory Jogger, a pocket guide to help software and business teams develop and manage requirements. 45 copies of that. Thank you very much. Must be a class. That's great. Thanks again, everybody. And by the way, it's really a cool little social experiment to see what y'all are buying on the Amazon.com link. It really shows the diversity of the audience out there, because there's, if they're political books, they're from the left, right, and center, and there are, baby things and grown-up things and, music from all. It's just amazing, the range of diversity, I guess, out there in the audience. And that's great. Beer brings us all together. Where did I live? Oh. Heck, that's it. Enjoy the holidays. That's all until 2 weeks from now. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson, who couldn't has cheeseburger that day. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long. Ho, ho, ho.